Let's go on a little journey. Northeastern United States, the great state of Pennsylvania. There's a secret here, and I'm going to let you in on it. First off, Pennsylvania is a very interesting state. It's a lot bigger than people realize, and it has some major cities that put the population at about 13 million. You've got Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Scranton, Allentown, Reading, Williamsport, Erie, and hundreds more. The terrain is also very unique. The Appalachian Mountains cut across the entire state, causing the southern portion to be smeared in this groovy ripple of farmlands and rivers. And the northern part is state forests, rolling hills, and deep valleys. Look at all that green. People forget about all that green. It's almost shaped like fingers, and it's in the middle of one of these fingers where my secret is located. The town of Blossburg. It's a coal mining town by origin. It's technically considered a borough, which means they can make their own laws and stuff. It's kind of confusing. The population is about 1,500, and it's nestled in a little valley surrounded by large hills on all sides. It almost looks like a crater, like the entire town just crashed from outer space. I love this town. I spent 20 years of my life here, and I want to tell you all about it. So from here you can see a big clearing in the woods to the northeast. The locals called it Seven Lakes because there used to be these massive pools of rainwater that would collect in the shale piles from all the mining they used to do. I'll get more into that later. Basically, Blossburg is very rural. If you aren't into outdoorsy stuff, you're going to have a very tough time here. The closest mall is an hour away. There's practically zero dating opportunities. Most of the community is retirees who just want to be left alone. There are no fast food chains besides a gas station Subway. There's only one bar, one grocery store, one library, and a lot of the businesses on Main Street, I swear, have to be a front for something, because there is no way a flower shop or an antique store is able to last that long without hiding something. All right, let's get our feet on the ground. I'm going to start my tour on Main Street. So as of the summer of 2024, this is what Blossburg's downtown looked like. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy. There used to be businesses on both sides of Main Street, but the side I'm standing on right now burnt down many, many years ago. I think it was in the 1900s or maybe even the 1800s. The Victoria Theater is probably the coolest addition to Blossburg. They opened up around 2012 and they'll show new movies, live concerts, all kinds of stuff. Then you got this yarn shop. I've never been in there, but I heard it's pretty cool. I'm not sure what this one is. I think it's abandoned, but it's a very, very simple town. Nothing too crazy. It's just very chill, and that's what I like about it. I think this one you can rent prom dresses, and then they got the Head Start. It's basically like a daycare center, early child care. There's a pretty strong military presence in the town of Blossburg. You got a lot of veterans that live here, a lot of retirees that served, and this memorial right on Main Street is just kind of dedicated to them. And right across the street, that place that would rent prom dresses now used to be Stosh's. It was a candy store, and I absolutely loved going there after school. And right next door is the Masonic Temple. I didn't know what that meant as a kid. It wasn't until later that I found out about Freemasons and stuff, so I'm guessing they have a presence here too. It's kind of interesting. So back in the 90s, it was actually an arcade, pool hall, movie rental store. It was just the perfect place to go after school as a teenager. You could pretty much do anything you wanted there. Now it's Carl Hess's tattoo shop, and he does a pretty good business from what I hear. He's kind of world-renowned. This is a just random insurance little store. Nationwide is on your side. This used to be Widman's. It was kind of like a mini CVS. Now it's abandoned. The Farmer's Table is still going strong. It's like a little cafe kind of restaurant. There used to be a Fox's Pizza, but that closed down, and now they got the Blossburg Pizza and Subs. They have really good brick oven pizzas. I was pretty surprised. But yeah, Blossburg has this curse where they just can't keep a pizza place, so I wish them the best of luck. Near the end of Main Street is the First Citizens National Bank here on the corner with their nice little old-fashioned clock out front. Across the street are some apartments and the First Baptist Church, which I think has been here since like the founding of the town. You got a time machine for Bill and Ted here on the corner. I think this used to be the police station, and now it's like an antique store. It's very strange. The police station moved over to this building, which used to be the school district office. They kind of got the borough offices, and then the police station is like in the back. Very random. They seem to move around every time I come visit. Across from the downtown strip is the Riverside Plaza. There used to be a store on the very end called Ben Franklin back in the 90s. It was like a mini Walmart. Now it's a Laurel Health Center. You got the other Head Start for early child care. You got the Housing Authority. You've got the post office. There used to be a Lemons Pharmacy. Then there's the Bloss Holiday Market and a Dollar General. My first job ever was at the Bloss Holiday Market. I'd stock the shelves, clean the floors. I'd also break down a lot of bloody boxes during their meat sales. I only made $5.35 an hour. Right here at the corner of Hannibal and Main Street, if you keep traveling up Hannibal Street, you'll see the school. It's only an elementary school now because they demolished the high school. But funny little story, right here on the corner, there used to be a cement bench, and a junior or a senior or a whole gaggle of teenagers would always sit there and just harass anyone that walked by. They'd call them names, bully them, try to get a rise out of them. It was the funniest thing. Further south, and you have the Old Town Hall. It's just apartments now, but it used to be the police station, the fire department. I think there's retail space on the first floor. And, oh, look what we got here, Trump 2024. Yeah, the area is very red, by the way. It's not a bad thing, it just is what it is. But yeah, there used to be a pizza place on the first floor. I think it only lasted like less than a month because it turned out they bought their like oven off the black market or something. It wasn't legit, so they had to close down. It's kind of funny. And over here we got the Red Apple, but it will forever be known as the Acorn Market for everyone local. It's always been the Acorn Market. It's got a Subway. It's basically a little Wawa. Kids will go there after school for like food and stuff. It's kind of nice. Across the street from the town hall are the Riverside Park Apartments. They're pretty much reserved for retirees, people that have medical needs, handicapped, things like that. So continuing down Main Street, it sort of becomes a residential area. And across the street here is my old librarian's house from high school. It is just such a nice, perfect brick house. I've always liked it. And way down here, right next to Town Hall, is the only local bar, the Bear Ass. And man, I have had many good times here. They have really good wings, really cheap drinks. They literally have a taxidermied bear's ass mounted on the wall. And the old bartender Brenda, after it was last call, should always be like, "Get the f*** out!" It was so funny. As you head south on Main Street, if you turn west onto McIntyre, it'll bring you to my favorite part of town. But you have to pass by these beautiful dogs first. I don't know who the owner is, but I love their dogs. Eventually the road ends and a walk bridge will take you across the Tioga River. I think this bridge has been rebuilt 2 or 3 times since I've lived here. I remember being in elementary school when a terrible flood washed the whole bridge away. The water was so high it was going into people's backyards and entire trees were floating downstream like sailboats. Do you see how orange the water is? That's from all the acid mine drainage. Some years it's cleaner than others, but you definitely can't fish in it, and you really shouldn't swim in it. Once you cross the walk bridge, you're at the Island Park. This place shaped my childhood. I have so many memories here I could talk about it for hours. Within the last 15 years, they added a walking trail around the entire park. It's about a mile long and is super relaxing. It's such a small town you can usually walk the entire trail and not even see another person. I always loved the layout of this park. There's a single road that loops around, surrounded by athletic fields on the outside and enormous evergreen trees on the inside. The trees are so big they can be distracting to people driving up on the highway. When I told someone I was from Blossburg, they asked me, "Dude, what's up with that cluster of giant trees in the middle of town? I see it every time I drive to New York." Yeah, well, let me tell you a story about those trees. They were hit by a nasty storm back in 2011. Some reports said it was a tornado, other places said it was sheer winds. Either way, the winds were so strong that they knocked at least 6 of those massive trees down at the worst possible time. It was during the annual Coal Festival, an event that brings about 2,000 people to the island park. The fallen trees smashed entire rows of parked cars, destroyed several vendor booths, and imploded pavilions that had been there for years. It was probably the craziest thing Blossburg had ever experienced. The aftermath looked like a bomb went off. I remember there was one girl who got trapped in a car when a tree fell on the roof. I think her sternum got cracked, but she made a full recovery. Miraculously, not a single person died that day. The sheer amount of people that were under those trees as they came crashing down, it's just crazy. Blossburg was truly blessed that day. I still remember how the sky turned green before the wind started whipping. I'm convinced it was a tornado because you could literally see the path it took based on how all the trees fell. It was just wild. But one thing was made abundantly clear that day: just how quickly the community came together to help clean up the mess. The borough was working overtime to haul off those massive trees, and hundreds of volunteers helped pick up the trash. People were even volunteering their construction equipment to help out. The island park turned into a lumberyard for several days. My video footage even helped a few people with their insurance claims. It was a very stressful event, but it showed off the true strength of this small town. Everyone was looking out for each other. And after all the dust settled, it's hard not to believe in miracles. The fact that no one died. Hundreds of people were crowded under those trees. Dozens of vendors, amusement park rides, kids running all over the place, and every single tree missed. Someone was looking out for Blossburg that day. Alright, let's get back on track. So this is the smoke pit near the walk bridge at the island park, and I just wanted to note this because it was so funny how it would always be full of teenagers, and they would always be smoking, and they'd be hooting and hollering to anyone who came off the walk bridge or drove by. It was so funny. But before I take you around the river walk, there's one more little secret about the walk bridge that I always loved as a kid, and you can actually climb under it, and there's this cool little fort right under the entrance and the exit. And when you're a little kid, you can just slip right under there, and it's like a little room. And it's so dark, no one can see that you're there. So you can just hang out with your friends. A lot of kids would go under there to smoke and do many other things. But it was just like our secret little getaway hideout. It was so cool. Alright, now I'll show you the river walk. So the whole park is surrounded by rivers on almost every side, and if you come down here, you can actually go right to the water's edge, and a lot of locals will swim in this section of the stream, because even though the Tioga River is orange, this stream that leads into it is semi-clean, and where the two rivers meet right here, the water is probably passable. Kids will jump off those rocks and into the water. It gets pretty deep right there. It's a nice little free swimming spot. But right there you can see the water is clearly orange and the rocks are gross. But on this side, they're pretty clean. Yep. Sometimes there's fish in here too. It's pretty rare and they're not very big, but it's something. Whether you're walking or jogging, it's just such a perfect little path. There's plenty of shade. You got the river right here to your right, and the cool wind always blows right off of it. Sometimes the water level is really high and it's roaring and it's really cool. Sometimes it's just trickling. It's very peaceful. A week earlier, the rain got so bad that it flooded the river and washed away a good chunk of the path right here. This is what that looks like. Yeah, the weather in Blossburg is very unpredictable, and this stream looks all innocent, but it can get roaring when it wants to. The borough will have it fixed in a few days. It's not a big deal. So if you keep taking the path, you'll eventually get to this beautiful scenic view of Ward Manufacturing and this gross, muddy moat coming out of a sewer drain. Yeah. I always thought it was a little funny that the barbed wire fence is actually bent inward to keep people from escaping the foundry. It's not to keep trespassers out, it's to keep workers in. Which is rather amusing considering some of the news that broke very recently about the foundry, which I will get into later. There is a lot to talk about. At the end of the walking trail, it brings you out to one of the baseball fields. My friends and I would launch model rockets from here, and one time the rocket came down on the roof of these bathrooms. I was a little monkey boy who loved to climb on things I wasn't supposed to, so it was the perfect excuse to get on the roof. I remember feeling so proud of myself for being able to get up there and save our rocket. I think my brother even took a picture while I was up there. This was back before cell phones, when people actually had to carry around cameras if they wanted to document anything. The rest of the walking trail leads to the Island Park's main entrance. From here you can see the skate park that definitely wasn't there when I was a kid. I always wished they'd make more stuff like that because not enough kids play outside these days. The walking path continues its loop from there, and it leads to more pavilions and horseshoe pits that people can use for parties and stuff. This historical sign really needs a new paint job. They also have this cool cannon for defensive purposes. The statue of Woodrow Wilson has been here since I first moved to Blossburg, and I remember some brat in high school cracking an egg over his head one day. Mr. Hall called him out over the loudspeaker at the pool and led a manhunt for that kid. He got in a lot of trouble when they finally caught him. One of the most popular spots was this pavilion next to the playground. It's where all the teenagers would hang out. They'd smoke cigarettes, tell dirty jokes, carve their names into the picnic tables, and just be rebellious hormonal beasts. We've all been there. It's a rite of passage. Even the school would use this pavilion for their popular event called Kids Night Out. They'd clear all the tables out, hire a DJ, and turn the whole place into a dance floor. I vividly remember my entire middle school class dancing to Quad City DJ's Come On and Ride It. We were so crazy. Now that I think about it, I actually had my first kiss in this pavilion. The pavilion also had a running sink, which was super convenient during picnics and stuff. It's amazing how many public parks don't have running water these days, because people always abuse the privilege. I also remember there were a couple summers where the youth center up on the hill would provide a free lunch to people in the community. It was all the leftover food from their cafeteria that they were just going to throw away anyway. Someone managed to make a deal with them to give it out for free at the Island Park instead. So from the pavilion you can see the swimming pool just up ahead. It only cost $1 to get in when I was a kid. I think it's up to $3 or $4 now. Their slush puppies were the best. I had a lemon lime one, and for some reason my brain has permanently associated that flavor with hot summer days at the Island Park. The pool was super nice, but I remember it took almost until August for the water to warm up enough for me to really enjoy it. The lifeguards were always the popular junior or senior girls that all the boys would drool over. They used to have diving boards, but they got rid of them because too many kids were getting hurt. I remember swimming in the deep end one day and this fat kid did a cannonball right on top of me. When he landed on my head, a bunch of water flooded into my eardrums and I heard this constant clicking sound for several months. The new splash zone replaced the old baby pool, which is a huge improvement. The old baby pool was only a foot deep and the water always had a slightly yellow color to it from all the toddlers peeing in it. The bathrooms near the playground definitely got an upgrade since I was a kid. I think there were even some rumors that a homeless couple was living in them a few years back. The Kiwanis building was next to the football field and it was used for all kinds of community events. I'd always stop here after my long bike ride to Arnott because it was the perfect place to fill up my water bottle before I'd cross the walk bridge to ride to the other side of town. The football bleachers are really nice. If there isn't a game going on, you can usually have the whole place to yourself. I always loved the sight of the mountain to the right where you can see the cars driving on Route 15. The old football bleachers were wooden with solid walls at the base. I remember my brother and I would throw knives and shurikens into the side once we found out they were going to be demolished. There used to be a payphone here and I actually had to use it to dial 911 for the first time in my life. Some guy across the walk bridge was beating up a woman. I don't know if it was his wife or girlfriend or what, but he was smacking her around and shoving her onto the ground. She was screaming so loud we could hear her from the pavilion. I remember the cop showed up pretty quick and we watched him get arrested. I think my buddy Corey even shouted something at him while he was being put in the squad car. And this was my favorite bench. I'd always stop here after a long bike ride and just enjoy the shade for a little while. It was in the perfect spot because it faced out onto the baseball field and the mountain beyond. I was obsessed with that mountain. When we first moved to Bloss, my goal was to hike to the top of every mountain surrounding the town and see what the view was like. The view from up there was the best. But in order to get up there, we had to hike up a drainage pipe that went under the mountain, and then up a very steep hill through dense bushes and thorns. Eventually we'd pop out on this little rock shelf and we could see the entire town. One night during the 4th of July, when the island park was setting off their fireworks, we hiked up there ahead of time. It was so cool because we were actually looking down on the fireworks as they exploded. It just felt so cool being up there, hearing the cars go by on the highway, feeling the wind, seeing the entire town from a different perspective. I loved it so much. So this is Morris Street, where the school is located. Right now it's just an elementary school. All the grass you see is where the high school used to be, but they tore it down a couple years ago. They were like trying to combine all the high schools into one big local school, but the community disagreed with that. I don't think the building was up to code either, so it was just a big mess. Over here's the student parking lot. I remember kids would seriously bring their hunting rifles and stuff to school, and you could see them clear as day in their back window, but no one cared. No one called the cops because there was no crime. It was just a totally different time. And yeah, so the elementary wings, you got like the 6th grade rooms, the 5th grade rooms, the 4th grade, they kind of went down in descending order. But yeah, it just makes me sad. Like, where I went to high school just doesn't exist anymore. They tore it down. And you can still see it in the old Google image satellite footage, but that's about it. My brother and I would walk down Morris Street to go home. And this building's kind of interesting. It used to be a skating rink or a bowling alley or both way back in the day. Now it's just like miscellaneous storage. I'm not really sure. I think the mayor was trying to turn it into an indoor skate park, but I don't know if that worked out or what's going on. And then you got all the apartments above the businesses on Main Street. And then we just kind of loop right back around to the First Citizens National Bank. I loved this bank because during report card season, they would offer these like money orders and like free pizza coupons for every A you had on your report card. And my brother must have won like $1,000 worth of those money orders because he always had straight A's. It's so strange not having the school here anymore. It wasn't a really big school. My graduating class was less than 50 people. There wasn't even a middle school because there weren't enough students, so they just jumped from K through 6, then 7 through 12. You go to the high school side of the building. Imagine being a 12-year-old 7th grader and you are sharing the hallway with these massive 18-year-old seniors. It was very traumatic and there was a lot of bullying. Oh, but boy did this town love to celebrate Halloween. This house here on the corner, they always gave out full-sized candy bars. I will never forget that for as long as I live. That was the house you go to. I don't know who lives there now, but I'm sure they're still good people. Got this statue of this weird little priest guy out front, and that's probably because they are just so blessed. This is where we'd have recess. We usually preferred to play kickball, and we would all get together and just whale those things as far as we physically could. It was great. And at the corner of Granger and Hannibal is probably one of the steepest sections of road in the entire town. I would fly down this on my bike. It is a miracle I was never hit by a car. This is the administrative side. It's pretty much where the elementary school and the high school connect. They still have a really nice auditorium in there and the gymnasium. When I was in elementary school, I remember walking down this hallway right here because it led to the library. And this was the main entrance to the high school. This is where I would go in every morning. And funny story, my brother and I were followed to school by a baby raccoon one morning. It was around trapping season, so I'm assuming the mom got killed and it just was aimless and needed company. And it followed us the entire half-mile walk. It was rubbing up against our legs and purring, and it was super cute. But when it was time for me to go in these glass doors, it did not like that very much and started headbutting them. And then this car full of teachers pulled in right here, and the raccoon jumped on the hood of the car and started growling at them. They freaked out, dialed 911, cops showed up, shoots the raccoon as all these kids are getting off the bus, and it was insane. By the time I got to homeroom, people thought my brother died from rabies, because that's just how gossip escalates in school. It was so wild. And then over here on Morris Street, after school, all the kids would walk over here to stop at the Acorn Market for candy and stuff. It was pretty much our after-school routine. And if you were one of the bad kids, you would meet behind the Acorn Market and deal drugs, and they weren't even subtle about it. It was crazy. This was back when the fire station operated out of this building. It was kind of cool because you could watch all the doors open up and all the fire trucks and ambulances pour out of there anytime there was an emergency. And there was a tower right there that would have a siren on it that would blare every day at noon, just to let you know what time it was, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure it was super annoying to a lot of the people that lived around here, and that's probably why they got rid of it. But I kind of miss it. So here at the corner of Lind and Morris Street, you can see something really cool. There are people that have lived in Blossburg their entire lives and don't know this is there. If you look up on that hill, you'll notice this weird little batch of evergreen trees. They just kind of stand out from everything else around them. My brother and I thought that looked a little strange, so we decided to hike up there. And we found this massive rock, just easily 15, 20 feet high. It's got all these cool grooves and nooks and crannies and caves. Apparently the locals called it Indian Rock, and there's more than one around town. We found all of them. This particular one's got this giant crack that goes right through the middle of it, and you can hike up it at a very steep angle to get on top. But at the bottom is this creepy cave. It's perfectly rectangular. We were terrified of this thing. We, could not go inside. But eventually we did, and we found something. So when you keep heading south, eventually you reach this intersection at Nevins and Morris Street. And over here, you can see this new bus stop they put in. I thought that was really nice. It's got a roof over it to keep people dry. But right over here at the corner is something I have to tell you about. So here on Main Street, on the residential side of town, there was a secret candy store called Boo Botches. The only way you would ever find out this candy store existed is if one of your friends told you. He never had a sign out front. He never advertised. You can still see the stairs that used to lead to the door. And it just got turned into one big house now. But you would walk in there, and this old man, who looked like he was 100 years old, would be standing behind a counter with all this penny candy you could buy. I don't know if it was legal, but no one complained. He was a completely sweet, harmless man, and we would go there after school also and just rack up on candy. It was freaking awesome. And down here, this is kind of funny, there's this telephone pole. And when I was in 5th grade, this would have been 1995, I was chewing bubblegum, and I was just done chewing it. I didn't want to spit it out, so I decided to stick it on the side of this telephone pole. And you can still see the gum. That's like 30 years old. And that right there is big red chewing gum. You can still see it. It blows my mind. I thought that was super funny. Just kind of marking my territory, you know? So the next road up is St. Mary's Street. This is where the roads kind of start to zigzag up the mountain to get you to the highest point. And there's this really cool cement wall here, and they semi-recently painted this really nice Blossburg logo on it. I'd always try to climb up this wall or jump off of it. One year a kid ramped his bike off of it and it blew his tires out when he landed on the road. It was kind of cool. From here you can see this house that I always liked because it reminded me of Beetlejuice, just like that perfect haunted house. If you continue up the road, it'll bring you to St. Mary's Church. It's this big, beautiful brick building up on the hill. Their bells will toll every hour. It sounds really pretty. You can hear them across most of the town. And yeah, it's just this really nice walk. It goes up a very gradual incline here. You got the barbed wire fence on your right because the foundry is right down that really big steep hill. And the barbed wire is bent inwards to prevent their workers from escaping, which I always find super amusing. But yeah, it's just a really nice, relaxing walk. The wind starts to pick up as you get to these higher levels, and you very rarely bump into other cars. You can ride your bike. This was actually the stretch of road I learned how to ride a motorcycle on. It was the perfect hill for feeling out the friction zone and how to avoid stalling it on an incline. It's very peaceful up here. So when my brother and I were really young, we walked up here one day and we noticed this very strange sign, and it kind of creeped us out a little bit, and it also kind of sparked our imaginations. There's this weird, like, area for prayer purposes behind this, like, gate. And when we were little, we thought they did, like, seances and creepy, like, human sacrifice stuff back here. I don't know, we just didn't know what to think. It's kind of bizarre. But it's not really any big mystery. The path just connects to the cemetery down the hill because you can actually walk up it and come around on the other side of the gate. No big secret, no human sacrifices. We were disappointed. Eventually, the road leads to the St. Mary's Cemetery. I always thought in a weird sort of way this was a very pretty cemetery. It's just on a hill, and that's kind of unusual. You can see the face of every tombstone. The sun's always hitting them. You got those big trees in the background. It's nice. And then across from St. Mary's, right next to the dump road, is the Arbon Cemetery. It kind of goes up this gradual little incline, and it's much more spread out and bigger. There's some really big trees, some really nice flowers and stuff planted all throughout. It's a very relaxing walk. I always love these white birch trees right here. And another little secret that not a lot of people know about, right over here is a bike trail. You just drive right into that dark hole right there and it takes you to Morris Run. It's really cool. So if you head back to St. Mary's Church right there, the road that wraps up around turns into Davis Street. And from here you can see the mountain right there on the other side of town. And I'll zoom in and you can follow the power lines up. And you can see another one of those crazy rock formations right here from the road. And we called this one Indian Rock 2 because it was the second one we ever explored. And it was pretty cool. That really dark portion there under the rock shelf is kind of a little cave. And a bunch of my buddies and I, would go in there, eat some snacks, just talk about stuff. And it was kind of our little fort. And over here to the left, you can get a pretty nice view of some of the rolling hills that surround the town. I think they're mountains, but depending on where you're from, some people might think these are just tiny little hills. But this one is a pretty big beast. This is the Cross Mountain, and it's like a 45-degree angle. It gets even steeper in some areas. But at the very peak is a cross that was put up there to commemorate a plane crash in 1967 that claimed the lives of 34 people. When we first moved to the town, we could always see this cross on the peak of the mountain when we would be driving down Old Business 15. And we weren't sure how to get to it, but we definitely wanted to. So we just took the direct approach and parked our bikes at the bottom of the mountain and just hiked straight up the side of it. It was so difficult. It got almost completely vertical near the peak. We're digging our fingers into the soil, into the rock, pulling ourselves up. And, the cross was really disappointing. It was just these sheets of aluminum with some reflective tape on it. It looked so trashy, but many years later, someone rebuilt the cross into this really beautiful, like, 3D white structure. It even had a little solar light at the top. The view from up there was gorgeous. These are some old photos my brother took. You could see all the way out to Cherry Flats, down into Covington, and you could even get a peek of Mansfield from the furthest side. The wind was whipping. There were so many like cool trails and hunting cabins we found up here. And I think these photos were taken when we were back in high school because they're doing construction on the new Route 15. You can see they're putting in the big overpasses there. They actually had to dynamite like half the mountain just to make room for the highway. It was crazy. And here at the corner of Lind and Davis Street is one of my favorite hills for riding my bike down. It was so fun. I would just fly down this. And as you can see, there's very rarely any traffic, so you're just free to do whatever the heck you want. And then up the hill, there used to be the water tower here, and they got rid of it. I'm not sure why. And then hiding in those evergreen trees, like I pointed out earlier, is the one big Indian rock. And further down Davis Street is where my old friend used to live. He had a cool little apartment there. We had some good times. Once you get to the top of the hill, Lind Street turns into Parkhurst Street. And I always loved these tall, thin trees right here. They always reminded me of something out of like a Dr. Seuss book or something. It's a nice little view of town. My one buddy lived in a house hiding up behind them trees right there. And I always loved this house with its cool little observatory up top. He used to have a telescope mounted in there that you could see clear as day. And I'm guessing he would just kind of like spy on the town. I mean, I probably would if I had an observatory. So as you keep heading down the road, eventually you get to this crazy power station here on the right. This thing makes so much noise, I feel like I'm going to get cancer just from walking past it or something. And it's kind of funny because one year this big owl flew into this power station, and I guess its wingspan was so wide that it closed the circuit somehow between two wires, and it just exploded, and it knocked the power out for like half the town. And then right here is the steepest hill, right next to the fun observatory house. And man, this thing is like probably the steepest hill in town, I think. This video does it no justice. You will fly down this thing on a bike. It is scary almost. And that crazy intersection right down there, you don't get a lot of visual space to see if a car's coming. It's suicidal. A little bit further down Parkhurst Street, and you get to this quiet little zone. There'd always be like stray cats that would come out of these trees to see me every time I came by on my bike. It was kind of funny. But I wanted to show you, right here on the left is the best hill to go sled riding down. This was like the spot to go. And you'd be there on the furthest section to the left, and you would just fly down that. And they would build up a ramp out of ice, and you'd get some sweet air right down that little hill right there. And I mean, I was literally going in the dude's yard, but he didn't seem to care because he's like, yeah, I guess it's good kids are just playing outside and clearly not doing crystal meth or anything. And then right here is definitely my favorite hill, going straight down Carpenter Street. It's not as steep as Hannibal Street, but it's safer and it's longer. You have a little bit more view down there at the intersection, so you can tell if a car's coming, and you can just ease off the brakes and fly down this thing. It's so steep. You can also use snow tubing in the wintertime because these roads have absolutely no winter maintenance, and you get a nice thick sheet of ice on this puppy, and we would fly down it on our tubes. Oh my god, is that a car? And this is the Blossburg Memorial Library. It's on the north end of Main Street. It's pretty small, but my brother and I loved going here, especially before we got internet. The parking lot's pretty busy today. I know the downstairs portion, you can rent it out for birthday parties and stuff like that, so there's probably something going on. And across the street is Jim's Service Station. This used to be a full-service gas station, but they recently stopped selling gas, and now it's just like a mechanic. You got some free tires that have definitely seen better days. But yeah, right here on the north end of Main Street, you can see the First Citizens Community Bank right there and the rest of the downtown. If you keep heading up Main Street past the library, it'll bring you to North Williamson Road. And this is where my favorite house is. Just look at that thing. It looks like a castle. It's so awesome. It's so unique. I don't know who lives here or if the house has like historic value or something, but it's just the most unique design in the entire town. I love it so much. But yeah, right here on the end of North Williamson Road as you're kind of coming in or leaving town without taking the highway. A little further north on this bridge by Ruas Street is another house I absolutely love. It's just this perfect little house on the hill. I don't know who lives there, but they are very lucky. It's such a nice house. Perfect view, everything. And then on this road here to the right takes you up to the Juvie Center, and this road to the left takes you to the Cross Mountain. So if you follow the road up the hill, it'll take you to the old hospital. Some people call it the Laurel Youth Center. Some people just call it the old hospital on the hill. I always refer to it as the Juvie Center. It's completely condemned now. All the windows are broke. All the doors are boarded up. People have broken in here, trespassed, and completely destroyed the place. Back when I was in high school, it was actually a functioning school for like teenage kids. Some of them had committed crimes, but they weren't bad enough to be tried as adults. Some of them just had behavioral disorders. Some of them had psychological issues. Some of them were in and out of like foster homes, and they couldn't quite go to public school. It was very unique. It was very strange. I don't know everything about it, so don't take my word for it, but it definitely had a weird reputation. And I have no idea why the doors closed, but it was probably for a good reason. This wing right here actually recently had a fire in it. You can still see the burn marks. I'm guessing it was either like a meth lab related fire or maybe just a campfire. I don't know. I'm trying not to be too cynical. After the hospital, you continue down Ruas Street, and it takes you on this nice little walk right here. And at the tail end of the road on the hill right there is this house next to a bend in the road. Whoever lived there when I was in middle school, they always owned these giant dogs without a fence, and they would chase me on my bike like they wanted to murder me. On South Williamson Road, there's this bridge I always loved. It has the perfect view of the mountain, the river, and you can hike down through the trees to get under it. We were like little trolls that tried to make a fort out of everything we could possibly find. The quickest way down was to hop over the edge and land on this very specific rock, and I was very happy to see that it was still there. And then once you were under the bridge, it was the perfect place to hang out. There was plenty of shade, a nice cool breeze, and the giant cement wall that we could use for graffiti. Now before you get mad, we never used spray paint. We used black lumps of coal like sidewalk chalk. You know, I'm a little surprised there's no graffiti right now, but I guess kids just don't play outside as much these days. There are probably more deer than people in Blossburg, and this is one of their hangout spots. Another thing we liked to do was dig up some of the fresh clay deposits that were around the river. It was just this really dense reddish-brown clay, and we would chuck it onto the bridge. You can still see evidence of it to this day. That's so crazy. It's like decades ago. But the summer sun would just bake that clay and make it turn solid, and it was right under that lip so the rain couldn't get to it. Yeah, this is how we entertained ourselves before the internet. This was also back in the day when random adults could just discipline any kid for any reason. So my friends and I were hanging out under this bridge one summer. I was 13 years old at the time, and I found this really cool stick I wanted to keep. Two of my friends were already up on the bridge enjoying the view, and they told me to just throw the stick up to them. We figured this would be the most efficient way. So they kept an eye out for cars and told me when the coast was clear. So I throw the stick onto the bridge, and this car came flying around the corner at the worst possible time. The stick hit the road, then bounced up and bumped into the side of the car. The driver slammed on their brakes, got out, and started yelling at my friends. So I climbed up the hill as fast as I could, and I saw that the driver was just this angry, unhinged woman demanding to know who threw a rock at her car. I showed up and I'm like, that wasn't a rock, it was a stick. It's my fault. It was an accident. I'm sorry. And she looked at me like she wanted to kill me. She's like,
I have a huge scratch on my car now, and there will be consequences.
I said, really? Can I see the scratch? And this simple question made her even more furious. And she's like,
No! You stay away from my car. You've already done enough damage.
Then she gets in her car and drives off. She didn't even ask for my name, but it was a small town and I knew she was going to track me down. Long story short, it turned out that this unhinged woman was actually a teacher at my school. I thought she looked kind of familiar, but she wasn't one of my teachers. She ends up going to the principal's office like a child and told him a very one-sided version of her story. The principal ends up coordinating with Mr. Hall, who was the head teacher and facilitator of the island park at the time, and they forced me to pick up garbage there every day for a month. It was complete bullshit. They never even contacted my mom about this, by the way. She never found out, and I was way too embarrassed to tell her. And thank God my stepdad never found out. He probably would have put me in the ER and then burned all my toys and video games just for an added bonus. But here's the kicker. I went out to the teacher's parking lot a few days later. Something told me this woman was lying about that scratch on her car. I found her vehicle very easily. It's a small town. There wasn't a mark on it. I checked everywhere. No dent, no scratch, not even a blemish. She just punished me for the sake of punishing me. But there's a really important reason why I told you this story. So even though this teacher really upset me, and I clearly hold a grudge even after all these years, it speaks to Blossburg's strength in a weird sort of way, that she was going to hold this random kid accountable for an injustice that she thought happened. You cannot get away with anything in a small town like this. Everyone knows you, or they can easily and quickly find out. This small town justice actually tends to keep people in line. Not always, but in cities, she wouldn't have been able to identify any of those kids. They would have told her to F off. You know, like, They would have avoided accountability, and I think that's why there is so much wrong with our world today. So anyway, another interesting thing about Blossburg are the demographics. The average household is only bringing in maybe $60K per year, which is lower than middle class. There was also a pretty high retirement population, and not all of them had the privilege of working a job with a decent pension. Money is tight for most families, and several people I know end up putting more money into their vehicles than their homes. It's a very rural area, so not having a reliable vehicle is a death sentence. So I've always been fascinated by these houses on the hill by Water Street, just southeast of Island Park. They are easily some of the nicest houses in the entire town. I've always found them kind of mysterious. Who are these people? Are they commuters who work in Williamsport? Are they doctors, lawyers, politicians? I mean, there's only so many high-paying jobs in the area, so what do they do that allows them to afford these mansions? It's such a pretty area, too. Very secluded from the rest of town. A steep hill with a looping road. Big yards, lots of trees, a mountain right behind them with tons of hiking trails. I don't know who these people are, but if you're watching this, I just want you to know that I envy you. I always like to walk up here when I come visit. It's very peaceful, and I always love hearing the church bells echo across the mountains. I'd hike up these trails all the way from the river back in the 90s, before these houses were even here. So much has changed, and so much has stayed the same. And now we get to Ward Manufacturing, the primary business that puts Blossburg on the map. I do not claim to be an expert on this topic, so please take everything I say with a grain of salt. A lot of the details aren't public knowledge, but I can tell you they were established in 1924 and employ hundreds of workers in the local area. They make pipe fittings, steel tubing, cast iron, and all kinds of other stuff. After the coal mines shut down in the 1930s, Ward's was the primary business that kept the town afloat. I don't know if it's true, but my science teacher in high school said that Ward Manufacturing actually built a piece for the Manhattan Project, which, in case you don't know, was the world's first atomic bomb. I don't know what piece they allegedly built, but I always joked with my mom that it was probably the on-off switch. When we first moved to town, people always warned us not to drink the rain or eat the snow because the foundry put stuff in the air that wasn't safe. Some days there was this weird sour taste in the air, and it was usually because the foundry was melting something down or burning something that probably wasn't good for the environment. I know they drastically overhauled their exhaust system several years after we moved in. For a good while there, they had these massive horizontal exhaust pipes over by South Williamson Road that would just pump pure nastiness into the air. But all things considered, it was a solid business that put a lot of food on the table for a lot of families. My brother and I were kind of obsessed with the foundry when we first moved in, trying to imagine what they made in there. All the cool conveyor belts, liquid metal, loud grinding sounds, barbed wire fences, flashing emergency lights, loud puffs of smoke and steam. Even when we'd hike to the other side of the mountain, we could still hear the foundry grinding away in the distance. It almost became soothing after a while. My mom and stepdad both worked at Ward's for many years, and they were on second shift for most of that time. For those of you who don't know, second shift is usually from about 2 p.m. until 10 or later. So my brother and I would come home from school and they'd already be at work, so we were totally on our own. This definitely had its perks because our stepdad was a real piece of shit. But it sucked only getting to see our mom on the weekends, even though we lived in the same house. She'd always leave us notes on the kitchen table we'd see in the mornings and would always write her back. I still remember how frickin' amazing the Ward's family picnics used to be back in the 90s. Every spring they'd have this big gathering for all employees and their families at the Island Park to celebrate another successful year. The company had Japanese ownership at the time, and they'd put a lot of time and money into that picnic. Tons of food, free games for the kids, all kinds of prizes and stuff. But over time, the picnics became smaller and smaller. Thankfully, my mom was able to retire from Ward's rather recently, because the fate of the foundry isn't looking so good right now. They announced less than a year ago that they were going to shut the doors, and even started offering people incentives to leave early. The scary part is that they weren't sure if they were going to sell the company or what exactly their plan was. It didn't seem very well thought out. Hundreds of people were going to be out of work, which would kill the town. Thankfully, I heard some company called Ritoria Cap Incorporated recently bought the foundry. However, most production has ceased, and nobody knows what the future holds. People are quitting, being let go, or having their hours butchered until they figure out what the company is going to do next. Ritoria Cap apparently specializes in recycling, and it will probably take several months or even a year to transition into the new operations. My mom said people can apply to the new company right now, but no one knows what the pay will be or how many people they'll even hire. Things aren't looking good. Plus, the idea of it being a recycling plant right in the heart of town doesn't sound like a good idea. Who knows what the side effects of that might be? The pollution could be even worse than before. To make matters worse, there's talk that they're going to shut down the elementary school. They already demolished my high school 10 years ago, so there won't be anything left. All the kids in the area are going to have to take buses to Liberty or Mansfield, which is going to suck. They're going to have to wake up at like 4 a.m. to make it to school on time. And the community opposes the construction of a big fancy centralized school. We just don't have the budget for it. And the area is so spread out and rural it'll be a nightmare for the kids who live in the boonies. My greatest concern is crime. For the longest time, Blossburg has been one of the safest little towns around. Now, with massive unemployment causing financial burdens, there are going to be so many people turning to drugs and violence as an escape. Break-ins have already started to increase in recent years. I really fear for the future of this town. Thankfully, my favorite swimming spot is still going strong. The locals call it Pirates Rock, but it's not listed on any official maps. It's another one of those hidden secrets you'll only know about if someone else takes you there. On the outskirts of town, about 2 miles southeast, there's a little dirt road with no sign that turns off of Ogdensburg Road. It leads you to one of the best swimming holes in the area. For the longest time, there was no bridge to cross this stream, which prevented most vehicles from getting in. The only way across was if you had a total beast of a truck or you were willing to damage your vehicle and risk bottoming out. I've seen several people stall their vehicles in the stream because they thought they could make it. So most people had to park their cars at the entrance and walk the rest of the way in, which was very inconvenient, especially if you had families. But within the past 10 years or so, they finally built a bridge. It's pretty nice too. It can handle the weight of large trucks and even RVs. Once inside, the dirt road leads to a river and some camping areas. I cannot emphasize just how awesome this place is. I would ride my bike here almost every day in the summertime. The water is surprisingly clean, the current isn't too strong, and it's relatively shallow in most spots. The deepest sections maybe get 7 feet deep depending on how much rain we got. It was also cool to come here after sunset because most people would be gone and the water would be warm like a hot spring. All the times I've gone there, I've never seen any snakes or venomous spiders. It was just this perfect little paradise. In the summertime, this place gets boppin'. There'll often be more people at Pirates Rock than the Island Park swimming pool. Families will make campfires, cook food, blast their music, drink beer, and just have fun. The most interesting part is that before the bridge got put in, it wasn't exactly the most convenient place to get to, so people knew they had to monitor themselves. We could not rely on the police or emergency vehicles to reach us if something went wrong, and I think that kept most people in line. Sure, there was the occasional littering, maybe an argument between lovers, or people who didn't know how to fully put out their campfires, but I don't recall any major incidents over the years. Pirates Rock was a happy place. Several people even got married here. I remember in 2009, Pirates Rock was also a sanctuary for many people. The gas well industry had come to Tioga County, and it absolutely destroyed the cost of living for most people. Greedy landlords were increasing their rent by almost 400% in some cases, because they knew the gas holes would be willing to pay it. A lot of locals weren't able to renew their leases, so they were homeless for a while. During this time, a lot of families just decided to live at Pirates Rock. There were fire pits, plenty of shade, and many other people in the same situation. They lived in tents along the river, doing the best they could with what they had. It became its own little community. And if I didn't feel like dealing with people that day and I just wanted to swim by myself, there was another secret spot further down the road. About half a mile northeast, the path would eventually bring you to a second Pirate's Rock. Not many people would be willing to come out that far, so I almost always had the place to myself. In some ways, it was even better than the main swimming hole because there was this giant sheet of limestone rock that had been eroded by the river into these chutes you could slide down. There were also bigger rocks you could lay out on and get some sun without people bothering you. I had so many tranquil moments by myself out here. Just me with nature. I still remember this one time I was laying out on a rock and I saw this raccoon at the edge of the water. He never noticed me and I just got to sit there and watch him. He had a frog in his hands and the frog kept jumping out. Then the raccoon would kind of waddle over and pick the frog back up again. And he just kept doing this over and over, like a little toddler discovering a frog for the first time. It was so funny. It was like something you'd seen in a cartoon. And I didn't have a cell phone back then, so I just had to enjoy the moment. There's one more special spot I have to tell you guys about. In the beginning of this video, I mentioned a strange clearing in the woods to the northeast of town. This would end up being another one of our favorite places to escape to. It was called Seven Lakes, and it was just this massive area of shale piles from all the coal mining they used to do. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, which really upsets me, even to this day. It's all been flattened out by construction equipment, and I have no idea why. I thought the gas well industry might have had something to do with it, but I honestly don't know. Back in the day, it had these rolling hills and deep lakes from all the collected rainwater over the years. It was the perfect place to ride dirt bikes, four-wheelers, go hiking, launch fireworks, and blow up dynamite. It was just a place for dudes to be dudes. Even in the wintertime, people would use snowmobiles to drive over the frozen lakes. You could just let loose and do whatever the heck you wanted. It had this cool post-apocalyptic feel to it. It was like a desert in the middle of nowhere, like a scene from Mad Max. And after a heavy rain, some of the lakes would get so big they'd literally have waves and it would look like a beach. I still remember how cool it felt when we discovered this place for the first time. We saw a break in the tree line ahead and were greeted with this massive desert of shale that didn't make any sense. It felt like we stepped into another world. My brother and I spent a lot of time up here with our friends. We found so many cool rocks and fossils. We were just innocent boys. We didn't smoke, we didn't drink, we didn't sleep around. We were just perfectly content hanging out with nature and seeing all the cool gifts it had to offer. There was also this abandoned crane that we turned into a fort. We thought it was the coolest thing ever. We'd just climb around on it or use it to stay dry when it would start raining. That crane was there for years. I don't understand how you could just abandon something like that. There's so much about Blossburg I haven't mentioned yet. There's an entire lifetime of experiences here, but I'm trying to keep this video to about an hour long if I can. I forgot to mention Tabortown. It's a small housing complex near one of the 4 main entrances to Blossburg. The rent is income-based, and I really wish more places would offer that. After they put the new highway in, we had to use a new method to climb up the side of the mountain. Across the street from Tabortown is a tiny way station, and hiding in the trees not far from there is an underground tunnel for rainwater. So we'd stash our bikes and skateboards in the trees across the street, then sneak over into this little shaded area. If you hopped down, there'd be a tiny stream that would go under the road, but if you kept climbing up the rocks, it would lead to a large tunnel entrance. The trees hide it really good now, but you used to be able to see it from the road. The tunnel is big enough to almost stand up in, and it burrows under the highway at an upward angle. It's the most convenient way to get up the mountain without having to cross the highway. This tunnel always freaked us out when we were kids, but it was also kind of exciting. Boys just like going places they aren't supposed to. You could feel the vibrations of the highway overhead, and we were always afraid it would collapse on us one of these days and would be crushed to death. Even on the hottest summer days, this tunnel would always stay cool. It was a trippy feeling when the only light you could see was this tiny speck in the distance. Sometimes there'd be a lot of water flowing through here too, and we'd have to walk with our legs far apart, little steps at a time. There'd usually be thousands of slugs and snails on the walls too, so you couldn't reach out to use them for balance. This is an old video from 2011 when I was hiking down the tunnel. As soon as I exit, you can see how visible the road was from there, so it's kind of crazy how much those trees have grown in over a decade. But the long, creepy hike up that tunnel is totally worth it once you get to the end. There's just one final steep climb up to the peak, and from here we could see the entire town. We felt like kings looking over our domain. Night hikes were even cooler. My brother would take long exposure photography of the town and make Blossburg look like this magical, glowing city. It would be so quiet up there. It had such a unique vibe that I missed so much. I always liked this photo because you can see the car's turn signals in the beam of light. And then we'd get on our bikes and skateboards and head home. We didn't have to worry about traffic. We didn't have to worry about curfew. We didn't have cell phones back then, so we weren't getting texts and notifications the entire time. We didn't even wear helmets because we didn't care about safety. We just lived to have fun and go exploring. And we were usually the only kids playing outside, so we felt like the whole world belonged to us. Like everyone else had been raptured and we were the only ones left behind. We were wild animals living in our element. Every time I think back on these days, I think about how lucky I was to experience this. How differently my life would have turned out if I hadn't moved to Blossburg. If I had stayed in southern Pennsylvania in a big urban area with a fancy school where I'd have 1,000 kids in my graduating class, I probably could have taken AP classes, joined so many clubs, had better job opportunities, more social variety. But would I have been better off? I don't think so. I really don't. I feel like there would have been something missing. This freedom I never got to have. That unique feeling of just going out into the woods and learning how to be by myself. This relationship with nature that would have been kept from me. To just look in a random pond and see this gigantic snapping turtle just a few feet away. To watch the hawks hover in the air before they dive down and grab a fish. The way the Tioga River turned blue that one summer. There was that stretch of water by the boat launch in Mansfield and it was practically glowing blue. It was so crazy. I would have only been able to see something like that if I lived like in a foreign country or something. I wouldn't have been able to ride my bike down the middle of the road for hours on end. Just ride out until there wasn't a single house in sight. I wouldn't have had such a tight-knit community of like friends. Like every single person at our school knew each other. My entire senior class, we were all like best friends. You don't get that in a big school. There's so much detachment, so much alienation. I have been so lucky to grow up in this small town. I really worry about it and hope it doesn't fall apart. I hope it keeps improving. I hope the businesses thrive. I hope whatever replaces the foundry does a good job and makes it even better than Ward's ever did. I hope the people stay humble and look out for each other. I hope the kids learn how to play outside more often and not turn to drugs for entertainment. And I hope that every time I come visit, I can still find a few things that haven't changed. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it was long, but I put a lot of time and effort into making it. I hope I did the town some justice and gave it the proper recognition it deserves. I wish you all the best. Have a great day.